Lee, are you having a problem with unmuting your microphone?
We're trying to troubleshoot it here. Yeah, I'm talking to her on our Teams chat, and so trying a few things, seeing if it's
You may need to call in to the dial-in number.
okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I think we can hear you now.
Okay, Lane, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, great. We can hear you too. Okay, we'll
Okay,
start
perfect.
with 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
There we go.
All right, so let's kick this off. We're going to kick this off as a city council workshop with the city of Lake Stevens. It's December 5th at 6 o'clock, and we are down at the mill. We're also online on Zoom, and later this will be published on our YouTube channel. And with that, I am going to call the meeting to order and hand it off to Council President Jorstad.
Thank you, Mayor. In front of us, we have 3 discussion items this evening. Let's start with item A, the audit exit conference, and I will turn it over to Barb and Matt.
Thank you, Council. We have the pleasure of welcoming our state auditor's office representatives tonight to go over the exit conference. they have completed our audit reports for accountability, financial statements, and the state and local fiscal recovery funds for a few years, for various years. Matthew Heiss, I'll reintroduce Matthew here. He is our finance manager. He has been the audit liaison for the last couple of years. And so that means he deals directly with the auditors most. Any requests that they have go through him and he delves them out, which is wonderful for me. And I really appreciate that. And I will let him introduce the auditors and go from there.
Great, thank you. Yeah, with us we have Ling Zhao and Erica Davies who are with us, and they were Ling. It was the audit lead for this, so I talked with her almost on a daily basis through the audit, and then we have Erica, who's the supervisor. So for the audit, and so she was in our weekly discussions that we had with the auditors, and making sure that Ling did good work according to auditing standards. So I'll hand it over to you two, and so Erica and Ling, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matthew and Barb, for that wonderful introduction. Yes, we are here today from the Washington State Auditor's Office to present the results of the city's most recent audit. So thank you so much for having us here this evening. Before we get started, we did want to mention that we're doing a PowerPoint presentation this evening, but we also provided a packet of information that I believe you all should have. We aren't going to speak directly from the packet. However, we will reference a few pages in that packet throughout our presentation. So feel free to have it handy if you want to kind of reference those as we go along.
If I could just jump in, I emailed that out to you guys today. Ready. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll get started here. And first, before we get into the results of the individual audits, we just wanted to take a moment to speak to kind of the bigger picture about why audits and those audit results really matter. The Washington State Auditor's Office has been tasked by the legislature to be the auditor of all public funds in Washington State, with the goal of really increasing the trust in government. So we do that by being an independent, transparent body that comes in and performs these examinations of all local governments in Washington State. And we can really get an idea of the sense of your operations, how things are going, the financial viability of the different entities in the state. And also with our unique perspective, with having seen all these different processes, we're really able to provide suggestions and resources as well to improve efficiency and effectiveness of government. So we're here today to make sure that these things are achieved, as well as we want to convey those audit results for your specific city and make sure that those results are understood as well. All right, so jumping in here to the first type of audit we performed is something called an accountability audit. And we actually performed this audit for the period of January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2022. An accountability audit is really aimed at taking a look at how the city safeguards different public resources, as well as complies with different laws and regulations, as well as its own policies and procedures. So you'll see here in the blue box is the part that you really want to pay attention to. And it says that in the areas that we selected, for the most part, the city complied in all material respects with applicable state laws and regulations and its own policies, as well as provided adequate controls over the safeguarding of public resources. So that's a good audit report. That is a clean opinion. And we'll kind of go over the specifics in the next couple of slides. So as far as figuring out how we select the areas that we're going to look at in the accountability audit, we use something called a risk-based approach, which means that we do a variety of different procedures, such as reviewing the city's meeting minutes, performing inquiries with different staff members like Matthew or Barb, as well as members of your council. We also do trends of information. So we'll look at payroll trends or vendor trends. And we do all these with the goal of identifying different areas that are most at risk of either noncompliance or potential areas that may be susceptible to fraud or loss at the city. And so after those procedures were performed, we selected the areas that you see on the screen here. So the first one being payroll, and we specifically focused on overtime leave balances and accruals and leave cash outs for the police department. And we're very happy to report that we didn't have any significant areas of recommendations over this area, which is really great. The next item down here, accounts payable, we focused on 2 items, fuel cards and electronic funds transfers. Electronic funds transfers is something that is a really hot topic around the state, as it's something that these what we call cyber criminals have really gotten a hold of and used as something to commit frauds in local governments. And so it's something that we're highlighting all across the state and taking a look at. And we're also very happy to report that we didn't have any significant recommendations over this area as well. The next 2 items for fuel cards, which is under the accounts payable bullet point there, and procurement for public works. We did have a couple of recommendations regarding these areas at our middle level reporting level, which we call management letters. And we'll go over those in a little bit more detail in the next couple of screens. And then the last items here, self-insurance for unemployment compensation. The city does have a self-insurance plan, and there's actually a state law that requires our office to review these plans once every 2 years. And so that was on schedule to be reviewed this year. And then open public meetings and financial condition is something that we look at on every audit that we perform at every entity all across the state. And it's just taking a look to see whether those meeting minutes are being adequately documented, as well as reviewing for any indications of financial distress at the entity. And again, very pleased to be able to say that we didn't have any significant recommendations in those areas as well. So moving on to the couple of areas that we did want to take a few minutes to talk about while we have you all here today. The first one being safeguarding of public funds for fuel use. And so I'll kind of walk you through a summary. I know this is a very small text here up on the screen. If you have that packet handy and you want to flip to page 12 of your packet, you'll be able to see it in a little bit bigger font. But I will make sure to kind of hit the highlights for you during our discussion, and please feel free to let me know if you have any questions as we go through this information. So the city does have above ground fuel tanks at the public workshop that it uses as its primary way of fueling city vehicles and equipment. And one of the things that we did was we took a look at the processes and controls that the city has in place to monitor and safeguard this fuel to ensure that it's appropriately used and authorized and safeguarded from any loss. And what we found is, while the city does have some controls in place, we found that there were a few different areas where controls could be improved upon. And so the first point here talks about our recommendation to adopt a kind of a fuel program policy. And so having documented policies and procedures over the fuel tanks, including security, granting access, tracking the fuel purchases, monitoring usage, reconciling the fuel tank inventory, all of these things are just really a best practice in our office's view to have these items documented. So that way they can be consistently applied and all city employees can be well aware of the city standards for processes surrounding this area. Next, we really focused on access, and we found that the city's identification badges, which are issued to all employees. You can actually use those to swipe and get access to the fuel tanks. And one of the things that we are recommending is that the city consider limiting access to the fuel for those employees that would need it based on their job descriptions. Another item is that the city does have security cameras that are installed around the station there, the public works shop, but the cameras aren't adequately reviewed to properly monitor fuel dispensing. And so we would just recommend that the city perform some sort of periodic review over that footage to ensure that you don't identify anything unusual. And then lastly here, we wanted to kind of go over the actual fuel tank inventory. One of the items that would be, again, a best practice to kind of implement is doing a quick recalculation of the fuel tank balance. So basically, it's the beginning inventory, when you get your fuel fueled up minus whatever your usage is according to the records, would give you kind of the actual measured fuel tank level and comparing that to what you actually see in the tanks. This would, again, is just another tool for the city to use to monitor and ensure that all of the fuel is being tracked appropriately and monitored. And so, as you can see here, these are considerations for the city to strengthen its process over monitoring of fuel. And when we talked to Barb and Matthew about this, they were very receptive, and I believe already started setting up meetings with Public Works to kind of brainstorm different solutions for these to just strengthen those controls up. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to the second management letter item? Nope. Great. All right. So moving on to our second area that we wanted to discuss today is procurement. And so the city has different procurement standards and state laws that it has to comply with to ensure that it gets the best possible price for goods and services. And so we took a look at the different thresholds that the city has for public works projects, for purchases, for using something called a small works roster. And we identified a few projects that we wanted to test to ensure that the city had adequate processes in place to ensure that it complied with all of those different state laws and regulations and its own policies over procurement. And we identified 3 different areas during that review, one of which was the 2022 annual pavement overlay project. This was procured through the city's small works roster, and it was under the threshold for being formally bid initially. However, due to some change orders and some things that were added to the project, it ended up being above that formal competitive bidding threshold. And so that is something that can potentially trip up entities at some points. You feel like you're good and you're below the threshold, but then some changes happen along the way. And unfortunately, with the state law, there is no kind of wiggle room with that. It's kind of, if the project ends up being over that threshold, it should have been competitively bid. The second one is more of just a smaller item related to the small works roster again. And there was a total of 35 different public works projects that were procured through this method during the years under audit, which were 2021 and 2022. And one of those compliance requirements from state law is to make a list of all of the projects publicly available by somehow indicating where or how the list can be obtained for public inspection. So if a citizen wanted to review that list, they could have access to that. And due to some turnover at the city, we just identified that didn't happen for the years under audit. And then lastly, kind of going back to that fuel item, the city does use one specific vendor to procure its fuel for those fuel tanks. And over the audit period, we identified roughly $437,000 in fuel purchases. And going through comparing that to the purchase threshold for the city, this is another one of those that should have been competitively procured. However, it looks like this vendor was selected just kind of based on direct negotiations with the vendor. And so once again, we want to just reiterate the fact that the city was very, very responsive when we shared these recommendations and assured us that they were already looking for ways to kind of tighten up their processes around procurement, which is just really awesome. And it's a testament to the great working relationship that we have with the city. Are there any questions about the procurement management letter that I can answer before we move on?
Yeah, Eric, I have a question. This is Kim Dodger, Councilman, position 1. On the first one that you're talking about where we went over the procurement because of change orders, I'm not understanding exactly what should have happened. It should have, was it, we should have stopped the project and went out for a bid when the project's halfway done in the first place? Or, you know, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. With the change orders, it is really tricky because change orders, if a change order is the result of something that is unknown, unexpected, unplanned for, then that would be a case where the city wouldn't be able to do anything about the fact that it went over the bid threshold. However, since these change orders happen to be for including some ADA compliant curb ramps and some things that were kind of more standard. And I believe they were actually a part of another project that got combined into this project. It was things that the city already knew about. And so therefore those items should have been considered as a part of the original bid scope. And if that were the case, it would have put the amount for the original bid over the dollar threshold for that. But you're correct in that, a lot of the times, if an error such as this happened, I don't think you can really kind of stop in the middle of the project and go out for bid. But it was kind of one of these circumstances where we weren't able to say that the change orders were due to something that was unexpected or unplanned because they were part of a project that the city was already planning to do. It just got added to this project for I think just kind of ease and convenience there. So that's a good question, though. The change orders can be a little bit tricky.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just to jump in there as well. This was actually one of a project that when we had caught internally before the auditors had come up. And one of the things that would be a best thing to do is that if there's a project that's pretty close to the threshold, we probably should just go out to competitive to the higher threshold to start with. So if there are those change orders, that would help negate any non-compliance with the threshold limit. So
I'm assuming the threshold is 400,000.
The 350,000.
350,000.
Yeah, so it was pretty close to start out with 338,000 with the original project. So
okay.
Yeah, and when we had caught this, we discussed it with the people and made sure it's we had a lot of turnover in 2021 in the Public Works Department, and so it's when you get newer people, it tends to sometimes there's those things that happen, and so but there were discussions that did take place for us to discuss what the options were of what we should have done.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So that kind of concludes the results of the accountability audit. And I will now turn it over to Ling to go through the other two types of audits that we perform for the city.
Thanks, Erica. Good evening, everyone. And I'm Ling, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to share with you the financial audit results. From the slide, you can see that we conducted a financial statement audit that covered the period from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st of 2022. The objective of financial audits to issue an opinion as to whether the information presented in the city's financial statements can be relied on to make decisions. So we are pleased to report that we are issuing a modified clean audit opinion on the city financial statement, and this is the opinion that you want to receive. It provides assurance that the financial statements are fairly stated and materially correct. Congratulations. It's also important to note that the city has elected to prepare its financial statement using the cash basis method. This is the reporting method that is authorized under the budgeting, accounting, and reporting, or BARS menu, and it is utilized by majority of local governments across the state because of its simplified reporting requirements. However, auditing standards require us to disclose in the report whenever local government chooses to report their financial statement under any reporting method other than US GAAP, which is a more comprehensive reporting model. As a result, we are required to issue a second adverse opinion, noting that the city has chosen not to report on US GAAP. However, there's nothing wrong with the city's current financial reporting method. And also, our financial statement audit are conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. Per the requirement from those standards, we gain understanding of the city's internal control process that it goes through to prepare the financial statement. Also, we considered the city's compliance with applicable state laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. Based on the work performed, we are pleased to report that we did not identify any weakness or concerns with the city's process for preparing the current financial statement. Also, we did not identify any instance of non-compliance that could affect the fair presentation of the financial statement. So for reference, the financial audit results can also be seen on page 14 through page 24 on the exit packet that was provided to you today. Then, in relation to our financial statement audit, we want to let you know that there were no incorrect misstatements that remain in audit financial statement. Also, there were no material misstatements identified during our audit. Okay. And as part of the financial statement audit, we evaluate the possibility that management may be able to bypass certain controls. This is commonly referred to as management override of controls, and it is a required risk for us to assess to all financial statement audits that we conduct. Based on our evaluation, we found no instance where controls were bypassed. Okay. And then for this year, in addition to a financial statement and accountability audit, we also performed a compliance examination over the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, or SLRF, for fiscal year 2022, because the city spent more than $750,000 in federal funds, and majority of them were spent under SLRF grant. And our review mainly focused on whether the city spent this federal awards on activity allowed, and whether the direct costs charged to this grant complied with the program guidance. And based on the work performed, we determined that the city complied with this requirement in all material respects. So the city received a clean opinion on this federal fund compliance examination. For your reference, this information is detailed on page 26 through page 29 of the exit packet. Okay. And then now that we have shared the city's fiscal year 2022 audit results, and we do have a few closing remarks to bring to your attention to conclude our presentation. So first, we are pleased to report that the audit costs are expected to be about $5,000 less than our original estimate. And it was mainly due to the travel cost savings because the entire audit was conducted remotely. In addition, we have included information on the city's next audit. And you can see on the slide, the scope of next audit will cover accountability audit and financial statement audit. And we have included a cost estimate for your budget needs in your active package. Okay, so then this slide talks about the audit reports. Actually, the city's financial statement and the federal examination report have been published on our website at the end of this September, and we expect the city's complete audit report to be published on our website in the next 1 to 2 weeks. If you have not already, you can sign up, to receive like emailed notification on when reports are released, as well as other like news articles or alerts, like including resources that our office publishes. And in addition, we will also be sending you an audit survey. We encourage you, as well as anyone else that's participating in the audit, to complete the survey, as all feedback is helpful in improving our service and knowing how we can better meet your needs in future audits. Then before we wrap up our presentation today, I would like to add some comments to this audit. This is my first year to lead the city's audit, and it was such a pleasure to work with Barb and her team. We really appreciate the exceptional support the entire team provided throughout the audit. Especially, we want to give a shout out to your finance manager, Matthew Heist. And as the audit contact, he always makes himself available and was dedicated to make the audit a priority by providing requested information, documents in a time manner, which really helped to make the audit efficiently. Thanks. And now we have shared with you the fiscal year 2022 audit results. Do you have any questions about the results or any comments about the audit process?
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it.
I would say lucky us to have these two folks doing all that work and making this happen. Thank you very much, both of you.
I would like to just comment, as they said, this our accountability audit was from 2021, 2022. As they said, we did have quite a bit of turnover during that time, and we had already made significant improvements in the areas of procurement and contracting. We do a lot more review outside of the departments in finance, and I know Public Works has already gotten together as a team and are working on a plan to address all of these issues and to better everything and the efficiencies and the compliance in the department. So I just wanted to make that clear that Public Works is all over it at this point. And I just want to say thank you to you both. It was great actually having you here. You were very professional and very helpful, and very happy to receive any additional comments or anything that Matthew or I provided. And I know Matthew provided a lot when it came to the management letter and different potential exceptions. He is definitely a great asset to our team. And thank you for letting us take him from you.
I was going to say, of course, to all those things. The last one, I'm just not quite over yet, but yes, we so enjoy working with you and your team, and we just appreciate the fact that the city is so open to our suggestions and that we can work together to create the recommendations that are going to be the most helpful for the city, because that really is our goal at the end of the day. So yes, congratulations on a clean audit, and we will let you go for the rest of your meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you. Huge team effort that definitely starts with our council and the direction that you guys provide, and the procedures and everything that the mayor has us put in place to make sure that we're in compliance.
So how many consecutive years is that? Clean audits?
I have been here since 2009, and so we've had clean audits prior to that. So we're looking at 15, 16, with the exception of the CARES, but everybody got issues. So we're just going to forget that when it happens.
I don't care about the CARES. Yeah, I think you and Community Transit are vying for first place on that, because they've had, I think, 18 consecutive.
Oof, that's a good one. That's good.
Thank you both so much. Any other Comments or questions? All right, we'll move on to discussion item B. Flock safety discussion. I will turn it over to Chief Bezizo.
Thank you. So we had a budget request go in for 2024 for flock safety. If you remember what flock safety is, it's a license plate reader technology that allows us to identify vehicles that are going past the camera. That helps us in investigations and possibly give us further leads. I just want to tell you about some success stories in our region. From Medina Police Department, they've had it for about 6 to 8 months. That's a residential community off of the 520 corridor down between Bellevue and Hunts Point. In that, they've been able to identify a mail theft. A guy who was going in and stealing mail throughout the city, and the vehicle was given a description of a white passenger car. They went into the flock system and were able to identify a suspect, and that led to charges. They also had what's called the African gang, where they go around these individuals and say that they wanted to do a business and help with them with different projects. Those subjects were taken into custody after being able to be identified through the flock system for a burglary that took place. They also had a construction site where the officers received information that there was somebody breaking into the construction site, and on the way to the scene, the burglar passed them at a high rate of speed. They could only identify the vehicle as a van. They went back to the flock system, put in the information that they recognized the vehicle, and were able to come up with a suspect and recover over $600,000 worth of materials. Marysville Police Department, they've had it since October 31st. They've had 110 hot list hits. 391 searches conducted by officers, detectives for investigative purposes. Officers received a flock alert from a camera at the 3600 block of 116th Street Northeast for a stolen vehicle. Officers flooded the area and located it, ultimately taking the driver into custody and returning the victim's car to them. Officers received another flock alert from a camera on 4th and Beach eastbound lane, and again at 1st and State Avenue for a stolen vehicle. Officers located the vehicle at the car wash bay at 70 State Avenue. Officers immediately apprehended the suspect without incident. The suspect is an armed career criminal with active felony warrants. Additionally, officers executed a search warrant on the vehicle and located a handgun. Officers later learned that the vehicle was stolen from the city of Snohomish and then used to burglarize a church in Snohomish. Officers are working with the Snohomish detectives on that case. One of the greatest things is an adult female met her online boyfriend at a local hotel. The boyfriend drove up from Texas to meet the female. The boyfriend wanted the female to return to Texas with him, and when she didn't agree, he took her away. The flock cameras were able to identify the boyfriend's vehicle. She was located in Texas and returned home safely. Arlington Police Department. With the assistance of Flock, our camera system, the Arlington Police Department has successfully recovered more stolen vehicles in the past 5 months than in previous 3 years. They have recovered over $300,000 worth of stolen vehicles and other properties during this period. Some notable incidents included identification of a double homicide suspect from a neighboring jurisdiction, the apprehension of a subject who pointed a firearm at our officers, and the capture of 3 individuals involved in an armed robbery at a local coffee stand. Additionally, they arrested another individual in a stolen vehicle with a stolen firearm, ski mask, and gloves, who seemed poised to commit an armed robbery. Their efforts have resulted in the recovery of significant quantities of narcotics, including a record seizure for their agency. In tandem with increased numbers of stolen vehicle recoveries, they're setting records for the number of stolen firearms recovered, all thanks to the Flock safety. They also say our investigation unit successfully served papers and located suspects evading law enforcement. They've also assisted in other agencies' major investigations by connecting subjects to specific vehicles, locations, and times. With this, I have worked to identify 27 locations throughout the city with the Flock Corporation. We requested a 5-camera package for this budget period. One of the 5 different places we have located as a priority is eastbound State Route 204 at Marketplace, just west of the intersection coming into town. Northbound Highway 9 at South Lake Stevens Road, southwest or southeast corner before the roundabout. Northbound 9 to eastbound 92, 127th at westbound State Route 92, and also down at Main Street during the construction here between 16th and 20th Street. These are locations where we see high activity of crimes and vandalism. with this request, we're trying to figure out if this is a project that the council wants to move forward with and bring into the city of Lake Stevens. Does anybody have any questions? I know some people had some questions regarding a policy. We have drafted a draft policy and have got that through its process. So now we're just working on whether we should continue with the project and move forward.
Thank you, Chief. Questions from council for Chief?
Yes, I have one question. During the public testimony, when this was first brought up, there was this issue that you retain the records for 30 days, I believe, before they disappear.
The Flock system does have a 30-day retention on their material. If we upload it, it will automatically go into what's called the evidence.com, which is Axon evidence, where our body worn camera digital evidence is stored. So if our investigators are needing the vehicle identification for a case, they will upload it out of the Flock system and put it into what's called our LERM system, our law enforcement records management system, and it'll be part of the case. Otherwise, we don't store anything on a local server, and everything in the Flock system is deleted after 30 days. If we don't get to it within 30 days, the information is gone.
Is that something, that time frame, can that be modified at all?
I'd have to check with Flock.
Yeah. Obviously, there's some concerns about monitoring of folks, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the biggest concern with Flock is that why they give 30 days. If people are on vacation, they may be gone for 2 weeks. They just want to have that opportunity for people to get home, see if they have any issues, and then be able to request it to the police department if they need that for investigation purposes.
Okay. I'd appreciate if you could maybe explore that and see if there is something we can maybe shorten up.
Okay.
So appreciate that.
Gary, what do you think would be an acceptable period?
I think maybe 10 or 15 days, maybe would be a little bit more reasonable. I guess the question would be, how long does an investigation take to get to that point? You know, are they typically in the 15 to 30 day window, or are they typically in the first 2 weeks of that?
I'll tell you from my experience, even 30 days seems really short to me. And I'll, just, if you go to 10 or 14 days and, a couple goes on a week-long vacation, they come home and their house is burglarized, and that happened on day 1 of their vacation. Now they're day 7. You write a report, it gets through the triage report process. Now you're at day 10, day 11-ish, and detectives got to look at it, read it, and go, oh, we might have some value here. And if you're at 10 days, that's already gone. If you're at 14, you're maybe. And I'm kind of just saying those are quick numbers, right? So from an experience standpoint, I think 30 days is probably right at the cusp of being too soon.
Is that what other cities are doing, is 30 days?
Yeah, I've seen cities do 60 days.
Okay, so we've got Snohomish is doing it, Marysville, Arlington, and Everett doing it.
Right now, Marysville, Arlington, and us, with the proposal. I know Snohomish County, the Washington State Patrol, and Linwood Police Department and Everett Police Department are all looking at the system. We're having a discussion next month for the Regional Sheriffs and Police Chiefs Association to discuss some of this stuff, because we don't want to duplicate camera areas that are close by our city limits.
Go ahead.
I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this in terms of privacy concerns and so on and so forth. And one of the things that occurred to me that kind of puts this in context is, anyone who carries around one of these, right? It's tracking you wherever you go. That information is stored not only on your phone, but with phone companies, with other app suppliers of apps that are on your phone for a lot longer than 30 days. Or if you're in your car, you have a OnStar or other system like that. Again, that information is tracking where you're, and it's recorded where you've been and so forth. The difference here is that this information may be pulled out of the system if a law enforcement agency who's a part of the system puts in certain parameters of, we're looking for a vehicle like this or like that, it will bring it up. Otherwise, it just stays in the system and then is fleshed out at the end of 30 days. So in terms of real privacy issue. It's hard to look at it, say, yeah, this is really obtrusive. What's going on in our lives now is far more intrusive.
And to go on what Greg is saying is our officers are on daily running out, seeing license plates and running license plates. They're obtaining that information and getting it stored in our databases and stuff. It's no difference than that. When one chief said it a good way, let technology handle technology and let humans handle the human side of things. And it's today's world with technology. There is so much that people are being tracked with and stuff like that. This information that goes in there is just a license plate. There's no identification of the drivers, passengers, or anything. If I put in a white van with a ladder on top of it, we're going to get a white van with ladder and then the license plates that are associated through that. That's it. Then we have to go in and tie it into our investigation. It gives us a starting point to do our whole investigation. So it's not just hey, we see a white van with a license plate, that must be it. We have to put date, time, location. We have to put all that together in an investigation. Right now, like the mayor was saying, I only have a detective sergeant and 2 detectives handling a case. It may take them 2 or 3 weeks before they can even get to the case. And start tracking with the caseload that they have right now. So that 30 days is very minimal. I mean, a lot of license plates, when we learn license plates and they're put into the access system and see just information, it is 2 or 3, 3, 4, or 6 months that information is still in there until it's purged out. So 30 days is a very short timeline for us.
I have a follow-up question to what Councilmember Peters Hagen asked. Do we have any sense of how these images or recordings would be treated in terms of public records? And is there any sort of retention requirement related to that?
The only time there's retention requirements is if we upload it and put it into our case file, then it follows a case. If it becomes a case that we end up prosecuting and stuff, so there's different retentions for that. Case files are cases are up to 6 years, depending on it. If it's a homicide, it's over 99 years that we have to keep the case. So it just depends on the type of case. For being in the Flock system, that's all Flock. We don't even they deal with it every 30 days and it's gone. We don't have any retention with that. But if we upload something out of it, then it depends on what we're doing with that information for the retention period.
Okay. And maybe this is a question for Greg, because one of the comments that stuck in my mind when the Flock rep was here was that they store the data, but it's our data. So if it's our data and we own it, that's, I guess, kind of where my concern is coming from as far as public record requests liability.
Yeah.
The question of do we own it that's a good question. I'm not sure how their contract is written. We don't possess it. We're not using it. And of course, the definition of a public record, is something that is used in the activity of our for some action by our government agency. Obviously, once we pull it up and we're using it, then certainly it then becomes a public record. But I'm not sure that it is.
Okay. Yeah. And going on what Greg said there, it's our cameras. So our location is collecting that data. It's going into their server. So they consider our data because we have controls over that. I can allow other regional agencies, partners. I can allow other law enforcement agencies to tie into that camera with a written request. And then I can give them permission to look at that. But that's why they consider it our data. It's because I'm in control of those cameras and who accesses them. So if somebody goes in and accesses it, they have to give us a reason. They have to give us a case number and the information going into it. And I just don't give everybody access to it. That's what they mean by controlling the data. The data is not served on our server or stored on our server or anything. It's stored in their server and it's uploaded into our Axon.
Okay. And I guess mainly I just want to make sure we weren't going to get bombarded with a whole new class of public records requests.
Yeah, I'll check with the Marysville City Attorney to see what
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Determination they've come up with that, or if they've had any issues with that.
And that actually segues perfectly to my second question, which I know we talked about this briefly, Chief. So that the actual agreement that spells out, the data, Flock's responsibilities and all that. Personally, that's something I would like to see. I know there might be NDA issues. So I don't know if you or Greg want to weigh in on that, but I don't know where the line is between Lake Stevens Police as an entity versus the city and whether that can be shared. But I would like to see that. I'm sold on the system, what it can do, how privacy concerns are really similar to other things that are already in our lives, but I still would like to see that agreement if possible.
I'll work with Greg on that, see what we can come up with.
Okay, thank you.
And I just add on a data classification and control. This is kind of category 4 and higher. So that means we have data sharing agreements, and they're kind of working on that right now. So all of our interagencies, as far as data sharing agreements, as far as content, has to have an active data sharing agreement. So that's stuff that the PD is already starting to work on with the different partners that we allow. And so those will be signed contracts that say this is what you can and cannot do with the data before you can use it. So.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions and a comment. After the presentation that we had in September, we were, council was sent an email by a concerned constituent that included a couple of links, one of which was a research paper that was done by the ACLU on the Flock auto license plate surveillance system. And I didn't know, Chief, if you had a chance, if you're not on the email chain, did you have a chance to look at that article?
No.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just forward it to you so that you have that available. It brings up some interesting questions and things that kind of got me thinking. I appreciated you bringing up the checks and balances. And within law enforcement, I think that it's a system of oversight and checks and balances. You have that built into your department. What kind of oversight is there on Flock in terms of how they use the data they gather, either today or in the future?
What do you mean by that?
What is there to say? Is there any entity overseeing how Flock uses the data? I hear you saying that today they're saying that they collect the data and they store it and they keep it for 30 days. But if they decided to do something different with that data, is there an entity that tells them whether or not they can make those kind of changes or use the data differently?
No, because they're a private company. They're not.
Well, I can maybe talk a little bit about that. Part of our security review of systems, they are CGIS compliant, and they also have to have a SOC 2 compliance, which means that they have third-party independent auditing of how their controls are in place. So they have to be audited. And I think that they're probably also FedRAMP too, which.
But does the audit determine what they can do with their own data?
Yes, and make sure that the SOC 2 compliance means that they have a defined framework for securing that data, whether it's, access controls for personnel, how it's being backed up, and what kind of monitoring for breach notifications. All that has to be in place, and we can request their SOC 2 compliance report.
So Troy, you're talking security. You're talking, can they sell the data?
Right. Can they sell it? Can they decide they want to use it for something different than?
We'd have to look at the contract.
That's exactly why I want to see the contract. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to look at the contract. And the other thing about it, I know when talking with them a month or so ago, they've had offers to buy their company from companies who do data sales. That's not the business there. Not to say they couldn't do it.
Sure. Yeah. I just wondered if I know there's, we work in a government entity. We know what oversight and checks and balances look like. I'm not as familiar with private companies, and especially with a private company that's collecting massive amounts of data. The article has quotes from the CEO that they don't plan to stop at just license plate data. The goal is really to create a national surveillance system that benefits law enforcement, but there isn't a lot of talk about sort of what they're going to do with that data and what they hope that looks like. I guess so that makes me nervous. I understand we're talking about buying this one thing now, but because it belongs to Flock, what are the safeguards we have, and can we give to our constituents about what happens if and when Flock decides to go a little bit different direction?
We can turn off the cameras.
And will we?
Well, so I read that same article you mentioned, and that's again why I think it'd be helpful if we could all see the contract, kind of get that line of, what data do we own? What do they own? What controls do we have over who it's shared with and where it goes? What are the penalties? All that I think would be addressed in the contract.
Yeah, it would have to be. And then of course, the other question is making sure that that's complied with. And that's where the audit requirements and be able to access that to somehow be able to monitor that the contract is being carried out that way would be important.
And Chief, I just want to double check. You had talked about some neighboring cities that also are using the flock cameras. This would allow information sharing between those cities
Mhm.
regarding what's captured
Right.
on the camera. So how do we know that, I mean, presumably we trust our own officers. How do we know that that information isn't being utilized in a way it shouldn't by other neighboring cities or jurisdictions?
Because they have to give access and I have to give them access control. They have to sign in just like our officers have been doing. So there's controls in place that they have to upload it and then upload it into their cases. So it has to be part of a case. So they're just not going to go down and start downloading information. There's no way to do it because they have to go through an audit purpose to be able to do that stuff. It has to be part of a case. They have to put a case number in, what case they're associated with and those kind of things.
So an officer just couldn't peruse at
Nope.
will everyone rolling down 20th Street South.
Right.
Or personally hunt for somebody of interest to them, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's, I didn't see that really spelled out very well. So again, along the checks and balances piece, that was another concern. I wanted to go back to your comment about they're just looking at license plates. There's a paragraph in here that talks about how, and it was taken from the Flock website, how what they specialize in is creating a vehicle fingerprint.
Mhm.
So it's not just the license plate. They use a proprietary machine learning algorithm to gather vehicle make, type, color, license plate, state of the license plate, covered plates, missing plates, and unique features like roof racks and bumper stickers. And so I think my concern is that this is really beyond just a license plate. And there's a comment, for what it's worth, that does this then allow surveillance of vehicles that have they're looking for a license plate, but also a certain type of bumper sticker that they're wanting to sort of target a certain type of person or type of driver. So it's just, I don't know, the article raised some concerns. Some of the information that the Flock gentleman that made the presentation raised some concerns for me. I'm going to stop talking for now, but I just wanted to bring those issues up, and I'll send you the link for
Thank
that
you.
article.
Steve,
Thank you, Chief. I would love to see the policy, the local policy on that. And I'd also like to see what the other jurisdictions are using policy wise. And I know a lot of times we draw from other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Kind of do that, but I'd love to see if there was consistency in how those policies are utilized and how those provide, safeguards for locally for the information. Because for me, as much as the larger scale use of the data, the local stuff could be more problematic for us if that's not used appropriately.
Yeah, and we all use what's called Lexipol. So you're right, Lexipol has an APLR policy and they're all written off of the same thing. When I went out and reached out, everybody had Lexipol that handed it back to us. So that's what ours is developed off of too, but I have the draft policy I can share.
So as I'm thinking about what Councilmember George has said, I don't know if you can answer this now, if this is a question to take back to Flock, but on the user side, the officers, when they're querying the system, when they're inputting these searches, is that keyed to their login? So say I am an officer, I log in and I say bumper sticker of political party X, find everything. Will that be logged? And then someone can go back and say, why are you looking for this?
Yes, the deputy chief is responsible to do the audit and go back and audit all that.
So that's all tracked and
Yep.
can be, okay, thank you.
So what's our do outs for y'all? Want to see a policy? You want to see a contract? Can we do that without?
That's a great question.
You know what?
I want to make sure that we're in compliance. So
I would trust Greg to look at it, and he's heard enough conversations that if he says our concerns are satisfied, then I would trust that. But as long as somebody can review that.
I'm sure these folks have a very standard form contract that
It's probably Googleable.
it might be, but let's check.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking for a policy, have Greg review the contract and then look at if we want to do other than 30 days.
I'm kind of fine after they explain it 30 days. That's a short time. I don't like it being any longer than it has to be. Like,
Yeah.
like 30 days. Some please jurisdictions do more. 16. I think 30 days is good. And we can always modify that if we want later. But
Yeah, okay.
Well, and I guess my thinking too is, it's either a yes or no. Are we satisfied with the data controls or aren't we? And if we are, then I say use a time frame that lets the system do what it was designed to do, which is help the police officers. If we have concerns about the data, then we should address those before we worry about how long. That's my thinking.
Yeah, okay. All right. We'll work on, I guess, the policy.
I'm a little worried about the white van with the ladder.
Those guys are all shady.
But what's your bumper sticker say?
I don't have, it says I love Lake. It says I love Lake.
Says Submariner, and that's the bigger flag.
Veteran on board.
Hey, Chief, I was curious. Medina, the last time I was in Medina was like 2010, and they had monitoring there then. I mean, how long have they been using systems like this?
6 to 8 months. They've been, systems like this, they've been using for quite a while, but this flock system they put into effect 6 to 8 months ago. They went in and put a proposal together. The council funded it and they put it into place. So I think they got Hunts Point and Yarrow Point that they're working on, and now Clyde Hill is developing theirs.
How many did Medina put in? She told us.
21, I believe. Yeah.
So
Can
how
you-
many of those are on?
Can you remind me what the cost was for 5?
It's about 20,000 with installs and stuff. That's if you have to install the pole and the solar panel, but that all depends on where the camera's put in and if it has power or not. But it's about 3,000 a camera.
Yeah, 3,000 to 5,000 cameras.
So I guess is that 20,000 every year then?
Yes. No, it's 3,000 per camera. So if we have 5 cameras, it's 15,000 the second year
So
because we've already got it installed.
You're paying for a subscription.
Yes.
Okay.
For the camera.
20 grand a year.
Yep. And it's also available to businesses too. So like in Medina, there's quite a few homeowners associations, businesses that have put them up in their parking lot that the officers also have access to
Wow.
if they get alerts and stuff too.
So one of the 7-Elevens are buying them.
Yep.
Convenience stores are buying them, putting them on the front, and their clerk gets an
alert
that, hey, a stolen car just showed up in the front, or suspect vehicle in an armed robbery in Kent just showed up.
So I have a question. So the proposal is for 5. How did we arrive at that proposal? And is there, how do we arrive at the number 5?
So I went with 27 was the whole, we worked with Flock and identified our whole city, and they came up with 27 different cameras, given the locations of our businesses, our access and entry points into the city. So that's what they came up with. And we just limited it down to 5 just as a starting point. That's what Marysville did. They had some care fund or some of the, whatever they call it, whatever the new fund it is with that acronym. So they ended up just starting it with 5 cameras, and that's what they started off with. I know Arlington put in over 60 cameras.
I think 5 is where we decided we wanted to give it a shot, see what the program looks like, and if we need to build it out, we can.
So just because it's on the record now, I want to clarify, those 7-Eleven owners, they chose to give the police access, right? It's not that the officers can just say, oh, a flock camera and log in. The owning party has to give them permission.
Yes.
Okay.
So can I go back to the HOA issue? So an HOA can purchase one and they have access to the data of the comings and goings of the people that live in their neighborhood?
Yep.
And so that's a concern. Also, so HOAs that have money get to have cameras, and HOAs that don't have money don't get cameras.
Yep. Nation,
Wow.
nation program.
Basic capitalism.
I'm gonna just.
That's why Medina has had them for many years and other cities haven't. So greater resources than most other cities.
So if you remember, that's how Flock started, was an HOA president wanted to know who was doing burglaries in the neighborhood. So he created the system.
You can talk about this all.
All night long,
All
all night long. Okay. Any further questions, comments? Thank you, Chief Bezzo, for bringing this forward. Appreciate it. Discussion item C, Ogden Murphy Wallace contract, 2024 fee agreement. Turn it over to Greg.
All right, well, it's been 5 years since we first negotiated a contract with the city. Uh,
Right up to your lips, all the way.
No, okay, how about that? Is that good? All right, we're proposing no changes, substantive changes in the agreement, just to the fee schedule. It's been 5 years since that's been updated, as I explained in our agenda bill. We modeled the fees using Michael Teo and Monroe. Two Snohomish County cities that we also serve, and these rates fall kind of in the middle between those two cities. The Monroe obviously the higher priced of the two. So we think it's a fair. The rates are our municipal rate. General municipal rates are lower than we charge single use clients. The reason that there's two rates, one for general services and one for other services, some of those services the city can like on your land use stuff, you can get that back from the applicant, and then we charge additional extra, and we have since the meeting on the litigation matters that take us out of that. But anyhow, it's we think it's a good fair contract, and we'll put that on the table, and if it's okay, we'll glad to see that on next week's agenda.
I'm fine with putting on consent.
Any questions or concerns? Items for discussion?
Greg, I don't want to get into detail, but I'm just curious, how often do you use an associate for?
Well, we've used them quite a bit. We've had an associate doing primarily a lot of the public records work. We try to, because that's kind of a repetitive going on all the time. So we try to keep an associate on that. We've had Andrews Hosing doing that, doing that work. Although he's going to be moved up to a member level, but we have a new folk that, well, you're going to get introduced to Nick, and I'm sure you're going to like him just like Andrew. And we also used let's see, for code enforcement, Emily. Yes, so we do. We try to use associates really as much as we can. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Greg is a member of the term that you used to use for partner.
Right. For LLCs, we are members. So we are not partners, but it's essentially equivalent.
Cool. Okay.
Equivalent term. Yeah. Owners, right? That's another. Owners of the company.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Anything else you need from us? Draft agenda, other than the draft.
Oh,
yeah, sorry. You're on. I did a copy of the draft agenda for next week.
Yeah,
the giant.
Gave to everybody.
Thank you. Draft agenda. Oh, and I need to read it into the record.
Great. And some of these will be consent. It may not indicate there, so there won't be a discussion of each of these.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tentative council agenda for December 12th includes a resolution to reimburse bonds, proposed issuance and sale of general obligation bonds, public hearing, recognition of outgoing council member Mary Dickinson, Feldman Lee contract, new employee introduction, Taylor Pessy. I say that right? Stormwater. Reappointments for boards and commission incumbents. I understand that there are several terms that are ending and board and commission members who want to continue. And so Kelly's hoping to do a reappointment, kind of a mass reappointment. Yeah. For the people that are interested. Everett Animal Shelter ILA, DCG watershed contract for the final design of the weir. ILA scope amendment for lake management with Snohomish County, ILA scope amendment for the 2024 stormwater education and outreach with Snohomish Conservation District, the Ogden Murphy Wallace contract, the Transportation Benefit Program Implementation Plan, KPG SOMAS contract for the 91st Avenue Southeast Sidewalk Phase 1 project, the BCRA agreement for the Eagle Ridge Park Improvements Phase 2 project, and then executive session to discuss both property acquisition with potential action and potential litigation and collective bargaining. And that item is tentative. Any questions? All right. Any further items for discussion in this workshop? Then,
Actually, I do have a question.
okay.
Uh,
I saw you lean forward. so
How are
sorry.
we going to appropriately acknowledge Lake Stevens' dominant victory?
Oh,
Awesome.
good point.
I know the mayor correctly predicted at Winterfest that they would have a resounding victory, so.
I do wonder if we need to bring confetti.
Ready?
Sure.
For
Just for next,
just
just to celebrate. Say in,
Gold, purple and gold.
yeah, purple and gold confetti. Okay. Great.
So my question for that would, are you cleaning it up?
No.
I was gonna say, what's Kelly's thought on that? So just cleaning up the room after.
I bet there's, aren't there some seniors that need community service hours? We could, yeah.
Kaylee, are you up? for-
No, she's done.
I will say Kaylee was right in the middle of the crowd Saturday night, right?
Very nice.
Yeah. It was fun. I got the opportunity to go down and hang out on the field during the game. What an amazing vibe and just cool environment. Our high school kids are just the best. They're so fun and energetic, and it's just a privilege to hang out with them. Cool win.
All right. On that note, we're adjourned.